What if I told you that the microwave in your kitchen, the Post-it notes on your desk, and even the chocolate chip cookies you love were never supposed to exist? Stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll never look at these everyday items the same way again. I'm going to reveal the shocking accidents behind some of the most revolutionary inventions that changed our world forever. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever dropped something and instead of getting frustrated, you discovered something amazing? Well, that's exactly what happened to the brilliant minds we're about to meet. And trust me, the story I'm saving for last will absolutely blow your mind. It involves a scientist, a melted chocolate bar, and a discovery that transformed how we cook food forever. Welcome back to The Curious Root, where we uncover the fascinating stories behind the world around us. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we dive deep into the most incredible tales of human ingenuity every week. Let's start with something you probably used this morning without even thinking about it: Post-it notes. These little yellow squares are everywhere, on our computers, in our books, stuck to our foreheads by annoying coworkers. But here's the crazy part. They were created by complete accident by a man who was trying to make the world's strongest glue. In 1968, Spencer Silver was working at 3M Laboratories, desperately trying to create a super strong adhesive. Instead, he created what seemed like the world's most useless glue. It was weak, it peeled off easily, and it left no residue. For years, Silver couldn't figure out what to do with his failed invention. His colleagues thought he was wasting his time. But then, 6 years later, another 3M scientist named Art Fry had a problem. He sang in his church choir, and his bookmark kept falling out of his hymnal. Suddenly, he remembered Silver's weird, weak glue. What if that wasn't a failure? What if it was exactly what the world needed? Fry coated some paper with Silver's adhesive, and boom, the first Post-it note was born. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When 3M tried to market these removable notes, nobody wanted them. The initial test markets failed miserably. People didn't understand why they would need sticky paper that wasn't very sticky. It wasn't until 3M gave away free samples that people finally got it. Once they tried them, they couldn't live without them. Today, Post-it notes generate over $1 billion in revenue annually. Now, let's talk about something that's probably in your pantry right now: chocolate chip cookies. Wait, don't skip ahead yet, because this story has a twist that involves a famous hotel, a cookbook author, and a deal that changed dessert history forever. In 1938, Ruth Wakefield owned the Toll House Inn in Massachusetts with her husband. She was already famous for her cookies, but one day, while baking her usual chocolate cookies, she ran out of baker's chocolate. In desperation, she grabbed a bar of Nestlé semi-sweet chocolate, chopped it up, and threw it into her cookie dough, thinking it would melt and distribute evenly throughout the cookies. But the chocolate didn't melt. It held its shape, creating little pockets of chocolate throughout the cookie. Ruth could have thrown the batch away, called it a failure, and started over. Instead, she served these mistake cookies to her guests. They went absolutely crazy for them. Word spread like wildfire. People started driving from all over New England just to try Ruth's chocolate chip cookies. Sales of Nestlé chocolate bars in the Boston area skyrocketed as people tried to recreate her recipe at home. Nestlé noticed this bizarre sales spike and sent a representative to investigate. When they discovered what Ruth was doing, they struck a deal that would make history. Nestlé bought the rights to her recipe and the Toll House name. In exchange, Ruth received a lifetime supply of chocolate and a small payment. But here's the kicker. Ruth had no idea she was giving away what would become one of the most popular cookie recipes in the world. Today, Americans consume over 7 billion chocolate chip cookies every year. But wait, it gets better. Remember how I said people were chopping up chocolate bars? That was incredibly inconvenient. So Nestlé invented chocolate chips. Small, uniform pieces designed specifically for baking. They literally created an entire product category based on Ruth's accident. Now, let me tell you about an invention that's probably saved your life without you even realizing it. Safety glass. You know, that glass in your car windshield that doesn't turn into deadly shards when it breaks? Well, that life-saving innovation came from one very clumsy French scientist. In 1903, Edouard Benedictus was working in his laboratory when he accidentally knocked over a glass flask. But instead of shattering into dangerous pieces, the glass held together in a spiderweb pattern. Benedictus was puzzled. He examined the flask and discovered it had previously contained cellulose nitrate, a liquid plastic that had dried and coated the inside of the glass. At first, Benedictus just thought it was interesting and filed the information away. But then, he read a newspaper article about car accidents where people were being seriously injured by flying glass from windshields. Suddenly, his accident made perfect sense. He spent the next several years perfecting his triplex glass, 2 sheets of glass with a thin layer of plastic in between. The automobile industry initially rejected his invention. They said it was too expensive and unnecessary. It took World War I to prove them wrong. Gas mask lenses made from Benedictus's safety glass saved countless soldiers' eyes from chemical attacks. After the war, car manufacturers finally adopted safety glass, and it became standard in all vehicles. Think about that for a second. Every time you get in a car, you're protected by an invention that came from a scientist accidentally knocking over a flask. How many lives have been saved because of that one clumsy moment? But here's where our story takes an even more incredible turn. Let's talk about the invention that's probably humming in your kitchen right now, the microwave oven. And this story involves chocolate again, but in a way that will surprise you. Percy Spencer was an engineer working on radar technology for Raytheon in 1945. He was standing near a magnetron, a device that generates microwaves for radar, when he noticed something strange. The chocolate bar in his pocket had melted. Now, most people would assume their body heat melted the chocolate, clean out their pocket, and move on with their day. But Spencer was curious. He grabbed some popcorn kernels and held them near the magnetron. They started popping. Then he tried an egg. It exploded. Spencer realized that microwaves weren't just for radar. They could cook food incredibly quickly. But here's what makes this story even more amazing. Spencer only had a 5th-grade education. He was a self-taught engineer who had worked his way up from poverty. His curiosity about a melted chocolate bar led to one of the most revolutionary kitchen appliances in history. The first microwave oven was called the Radarange, and it was massive, about the size of a refrigerator, and cost over $50,000 in today's money. It was primarily sold to restaurants and ships. It wasn't until the 1970s that countertop microwaves became affordable for home use. Today, over 90% of American households have a microwave oven. We reheat leftovers, make popcorn, and even cook entire meals using technology that was discovered because a chocolate bar melted in someone's pocket. Spencer received just $2 for his patent, but his accidental discovery revolutionized how we prepare food. Here's something that will make you think differently about accidents. All of these inventors had one thing in common. They paid attention to their mistakes. They didn't throw away the failed experiment or clean up the mess and forget about it. They asked, "What if?" and "Why did this happen?" Spencer Silver could have thrown away his weak glue and started over. Ruth Wakefield could have tossed her chocolate chip cookies in the trash. Edouard Benedictus could have simply cleaned up his broken flask and ordered a new one. Percy Spencer could have changed his clothes and forgotten about the melted chocolate. But they didn't. They recognized that sometimes our biggest failures can become our greatest successes. They understood that innovation often comes from the most unexpected places. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you made a mistake and just tried to fix it as quickly as possible? What if, instead, you stopped and asked yourself what you could learn from that mistake? What if your next accidental discovery is sitting right there, waiting for you to notice it? But wait, there's one more story I have to tell you, and this one involves an invention that literally shaped the modern world. Velcro. Yes, those strips with tiny hooks and loops that hold everything together. In 1941, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral went for a hunting trip with his dog in the Alps. When they returned, both he and his dog were covered in burrs, those annoying seed pods that stick to everything. Most people would just pick them off and complain about the mess. But de Mestral was fascinated. He put one of the burrs under a microscope and discovered they were covered in tiny hooks that grabbed onto anything with loops, like fabric or animal fur. He realized he could create a fastener based on this natural design. It took him 8 years to perfect his invention. He had to figure out how to mass-produce the hooks and loops, and he faced rejection after rejection from manufacturers who thought the idea was ridiculous. But de Mestral persisted. When Velcro finally hit the market, it revolutionized everything from children's shoes to spacesuits. NASA used it extensively in the space program because it worked in zero gravity. Today, Velcro generates hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue annually. Here's what's incredible about all these stories. None of these inventors set out to create their famous inventions. They were all trying to solve completely different problems. Post-it notes came from trying to make super glue. Chocolate chip cookies came from running out of baking chocolate. Safety glass came from a clumsy accident. Microwaves came from radar research. Velcro came from annoying burrs on a nature walk. But here's the real lesson. Innovation doesn't always come from carefully planned research and development. Sometimes it comes from being open to possibilities, from paying attention to the unexpected, from asking, what if this mistake is actually an opportunity? The next time you heat up leftovers in your microwave, stick a Post-it note to your computer, put on shoes with Velcro straps, or enjoy a chocolate chip cookie. Remember these stories. Remember that some of humanity's greatest innovations came from people who were curious enough to explore their accidents rather than just clean them up. And who knows? Maybe your next mistake will be the next great accidental invention that changes the world. What's the most interesting accident you've ever had? Have you ever discovered something useful by mistake? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed learning about these incredible accidental inventions, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to The Curious Root for more fascinating stories about the world around us. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the best discoveries happen when we least expect them.